Welcome to Freedom Friday, where we shine a light on the counter narratives of faith, hope, and resilience rooted in the power of the risen Christ. I'm Conroy Reynolds, and today we're going back to a little known black prophet of the Bible, Zephaniah. You may not have heard many sermons from Zephaniah, but his words spoken over 2,000 years ago still echo with power, especially for those of us whose heritage traces beyond the rivers of Cush. So let's take a moment to listen to his voice. He pronounced two prophetic messages to the Cushite people. The first is in chapter 2 and verse 12 of his book. God is speaking through Zephaniah. You Cushites, too, says the voice, will be slain by my sword. And then in chapter 3 and verses 9 and 10, then I will purify the lips of the people, Yahweh says, that all of them may call on the name of the Lord and serve him shoulder to shoulder. From beyond the rivers of Cush, my worshippers, my scattered people, will bring me offerings. Zephaniah was no outsider to the people he prophesied to. Scripture introduces him as the son of Cushi, a descendant of Cush, a region known today as modern-day Sudan and Ethiopia. You can check out our previous video on the prophet's ethnicity. In today's terms, Zephaniah was a black prophet, and he didn't pull any punches even with his own people. He begins his message with a harsh truth. Judgment is coming, even to the Cushites. In verse 12 of chapter 2, God declares that the Cushites, along with other rebellious pagan nations, will fall under divine judgment. But Zephaniah's message doesn't stop there. That's not how this story ends. In chapter 3, there's a turn, a movement from judgment to restoration. Then God says, I will purify the lips of the people. What an interesting prophecy. From beyond the rivers of Cush, my worshippers, my scattered people, will bring me offerings. To understand the power of this promise, we have to go back to the Tower of Babel. Yes, you remember that story. Humanity tried to build a tower to the heavens. God responded by confusing their language and scattering them across the earth. That scattering from Babel represents the movement of the nations away from Yahweh worship. In turning away from Yahweh, the Cushites specifically created a host of deities. Chief among them was Amun, a creator god often merged with the sun god Ra. In Egyptian theology, he is Amun-Ra. He is venerated in Nubia, Cush, as a supreme deity who legitimized royal power. Another prominent figure was Epidemic, the lion-headed war god who was uniquely Cushite in origin. He symbolized the strength, protection, and might of the Nubian kings. Rituals and temples dedicated to these gods, particularly in cities like Napata and Meroe, underscored a spiritual system that elevated human rulers to divine status and fostered idolatrous worship condemned by Yahweh's prophets. The worship of these gods marked a turn from the monotheism of Yahweh to a polytheistic worldview, rooted in human deification and natural forces. It was these pagan practices that prompted divine judgment through the prophet Zephaniah. But here's the twist. Zephaniah's prophecy is a reversal of Babel. Where God once scattered, now he is gathering. The temple of the Lord replaces the Tower of Babel, the symbol of rebellion. Where there was confusion of speech, now he promises pure lips. In the original Hebrew, there's a powerful wordplay in this verse. The same root word used to describe how God scattered the people at Babel shows up again when he talks about his scattered worshippers returning. And where Babel's language was confused, Zephaniah uses a different Hebrew word meaning to purify, to show that God will cleanse their speech. It is as if the prophet is saying the same God who scattered by confusion of speech will also gather by purifying the lips. And this time, he'll restore what was broken. They will worship him from pure lips. And who's included in this redemption? The Cushites, among others, of course. The black descendants of Ham are among those who return. The very ones judged in chapter 2 are now called my worshippers, my scattered people in chapter 3. This is God's way of saying, I haven't forgotten you. Even among the nations that went into paganism, even among those who wandered far from the worship of Yahweh, God still knows those who are his. The psalmist further confirms this prophecy in Psalm 68 and verse 31, when he says, envoys will come from Egypt. Cush will submit herself to God. Zephaniah prophesies a day when God's worshippers will return, not with empty hands, but with offerings. And not just any offerings. The Hebrew word used here isn't about temple sacrifices. The offering here is about voluntary gifts given freely and gratefully by people whose hearts have been turned back to God. And when they come, they will not come alone. They will come shoulder to shoulder. I love that expression. They will come shoulder to shoulder, united in worship with people from all nations, no longer divided by language, race, or history. A new kind of unity, born not from human ambition like at Babel, but from divine redemption. So what's the message for us today who are beyond the rivers of Cush? If you feel scattered, if your people have been pushed to the margins, if your heritage traces back to Cush or beyond, hear Zephaniah's voice. God is gathering his scattered people. God is purifying speech and hearts. God is building a united, worshiping people, standing shoulder to shoulder. The power of united action remains one of the great lessons we as a people have yet to learn. The descendants of Cush must stand shoulder to shoulder, calling on the name of the Lord as one people. This black prophet's voice still speaks, and his message is this: return as one people. Bring your offering, that is yourselves. You have not been forgotten. Yahweh has made provision for his people. Thanks for joining us on Freedom Friday this week. If this episode encouraged you, share it with someone who needs to know their story is part of God's story. Until next time then, keep walking in faith, hope, and the freedom that only Christ can give. This is Freedom Friday, where we tell the whole story